The distress signal arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters on a quiet morning. The message was simple and desperate. The peaceful Velaran colony on Thessera Prime was under attack. A pirate armada led by the Kragnath Dominion had surrounded their planet. They were demanding surrender. The Council had already sent 3 fleets to help. All 3 had been destroyed. The Kragnath were too strong, too vicious. Their ships could tear through the best shields in the galaxy. Their weapons could burn cities to ash in minutes. The Council members sat in their chamber, looking at each other with fear in their eyes. They had no more fleets to send. Ambassador Vexitari stood before the Council. His 4 arms trembled slightly as he spoke. "There is one option left," he said slowly. "We could ask Earth for help." The chamber fell silent. Every council member knew about Earth. It was a Class Thasan Deathworld, one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered. The creatures that lived there were classified as extreme survivors. The Council had studied Earth from a distance for 50 years, too afraid to make contact. The humans who lived there had survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and thousands of wars. They were predators who had learned to hunt other predators. They were prey who had learned to fight back. They were dangerous. "No," said Council Leader Morthon. "We agreed never to contact them." "Then the Velarans will die," Vextari replied. "We have no choice." After hours of debate, the Council voted. They would break their own rules. They would ask the humans for help. Far across the galaxy, Captain Timon sat in the command chair of the UES Indomitable. The ship was Earth's first deep space warship, built for exploration and defense. Timon was a veteran of Earth's unification wars. He had seen combat in 3 continents and 2 orbital stations. He knew what war looked like. His tactical officer, Commander Yuna, worked at her station nearby. She was younger than Timon, but just as experienced. She had flown fighters during the Korean Aerospace Division's campaigns. Her mind worked like a computer, always calculating odds and angles. "Captain," said the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission. It's encoded with Galactic Council markers." Timon sat forward. "Put it through." Ambassador Vextari's face appeared on the screen. He looked nervous. "Captain Timon of Earth, I am Ambassador Vexitari of the Galactic Council. We need your help." Timon listened as the ambassador explained the situation. He talked about the Velaran colony, the pirate fleet, the failed rescue attempts. He spoke quickly, like he was afraid Timon would refuse before he finished. When Vextari finally stopped talking, Timon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We're on our way." Vextari blinked all 4 of his eyes. You are? Just like that? Don't you want compensation, territory, resources?" "People are dying," Timon said simply. "That's all we need to know. Send us the coordinates. Indomitable out." The screen went dark. Yuna looked at her captain. "Sir, we'll need more than 1 ship for this." "Agreed. Contact the Resolute, the Defiant, the Horizon, and the Sentinel. Tell them to meet us at the following coordinates. Full combat load." "Yes, sir." Lieutenant Ji-Ho entered the bridge. He was the head of the ship's Marine Division, responsible for all ground and boarding operations. He had grown up in one of the harsh Antarctic settlements, where survival meant being tough every single day. "Captain, I heard we're going into combat?" "That's correct, Lieutenant. Prepare your teams. Full gear." Ji-Ho smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "They're already preparing, sir." Down in the medical bay, Dr. Sujin was checking her supplies. She had served in 3 disaster zones on Earth before joining the space service. She had treated victims of earthquakes, floods, and chemical accidents. She knew how to save lives when everything was falling apart. Her assistant approached. "Doctor, we just got word. Combat mission." Sujin nodded and started pulling equipment from storage. "Set up the emergency surgical units, all of them, and prep the trauma pods." "All of them?" "Doctor, that's for mass casualties." "Better to have them ready and not need them," Sujin said quietly. On Thessera Prime, Hanul watched the sky through her window. She was a human ethnobiologist who had come to study with the Velarans 2 years ago. She had wanted to learn about alien cultures and biology. Instead, she was about to die. The Kragnath ships hung in orbit like dark moons. Every few hours, they would fire warning shots at the planet's surface. Buildings would explode. Forests would burn. The message was clear. Surrender or be destroyed. Ha-Nul's Valoran friends huddled together in the shelter. They were peaceful people, evolved from herd animals on a gentle world. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of violence on this scale. They were terrified. "Hanal," said her friend Pelix. "Your people. Would they come if they knew?" Ha-Nul thought about Earth. She thought about humanity's long, bloody history, but she also thought about the firefighters who ran into burning buildings, the medics who worked in war zones, the volunteers who dug through rubble to save strangers. Humans could be violent, yes, but they could also be heroes. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I can ask." She recorded a message on her personal communicator. She talked about the siege, about the Velerans, about how much time they had left. She sent it toward Earth, knowing it would take days to arrive, knowing it might arrive too late. "Please," she whispered to the recording, "we need help." 3 days later, the human fleet gathered at the rendezvous point. 5 warships, each one carrying a crew that had trained for this moment. Captain Taman stood on his bridge and looked at the tactical display. The journey to Thessera Prime would take 8 days at maximum speed. "All ships, this is indomitable," he broadcast. "We have civilians under attack. The enemy is strong and ruthless. The odds are not in our favor. But when have humans ever cared about odds?" On the other ships, crews smiled grimly. They checked their weapons, ran system diagnostics, and prepared for battle. "Engage gravity skip drives," Taman ordered. "Let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do." The 5 ships accelerated, jumping between gravity wells at speeds that would kill most other species. Inside, the human crews worked under crushing G-forces that they barely noticed. They had evolved on a world with strong gravity. They were built for this. On the Council station, Vextari watched the human ships on long-range sensors. They were moving impossibly fast, pushing their engines beyond safe limits. "They're going to kill themselves," another ambassador said. Vextari wasn't sure. He had studied humans extensively. They seemed to have a talent for surviving the impossible. "Perhaps," he said softly, "or perhaps we're about to see why their planet couldn't kill them." The human fleet raced through the void, carrying with them the hopes of the Valoran people and the fears of the Galactic Council. They were heading toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The human fleet moved through space like angry hornets. Inside the Indomitable, the crew worked at a pace that would exhaust most other species. But humans were different. They had evolved on a world where rest meant death. Engineering Chief Yunwoo worked in the reactor room, where the temperature was hot enough to boil water. He didn't wear a cooling suit like other species would. His body could handle it. Earth had been hotter than this during his training in the Sahara facilities. "Push the reactors to 140%, he ordered his team. One of the younger engineers looked worried. "Chief, the manufacturer says the safe limit is 110%. Hyunwoo laughed. "The manufacturer never had to outrun pirates to save lives." "Do it." The reactors hummed louder. More power flowed to the engines. The ship accelerated even faster. On the bridge, Navigator Dong-hyun plotted their course through the gravity wells. He was a thin man with quick fingers and faster thoughts. He had grown up on one of Earth's orbital stations, where a single calculation error could kill hundreds of people. He never made errors. "Captain," he said, "I'm detecting the Council's third fleet, or what's left of it." "Slow to normal speed," Taiman ordered. "Let's see what happened." The human ships dropped out of their high-speed run. Ahead of them floated the wreckage of 20 Council warships. Some were torn in half. Others were just debris fields. A few limped along on emergency power. "Hail the lead ship," Taman said. A 4-armed alien appeared on the screen. He looked exhausted and frightened. "This is Commander Thezek of the Council Defense Fleet. Who are you?" "Captain Taman of Earth. We're here to help at Thessera Prime." Thezek's face showed something between hope and horror. You're the humans? The Deathworlders? That's what you call us, yes. Captain, you cannot fight the Kragnath. Their weapons are too powerful. They have plasma cannons that can melt through our strongest shields in seconds. They have kinetic accelerators that can punch through a hull from 1,000 kilometers away. We lost 2/3 of our fleet in the first hour. Timon nodded slowly. Thank you for the warning, Commander. We'll be careful. Careful? Thesic looked confused. Captain, you don't understand. You need to turn back, get reinforcements, better weapons. The Kragnath will destroy you. Commander Yuna spoke from her station. Commander Thesic, what kind of defensive systems does your fleet use? Standard Council shields, Thesic replied. Multi-layered energy barriers designed to deflect or absorb incoming fire. And when they failed, what happened? The enemy weapons went right through our hulls. Our ships are built light for speed and efficiency. Yuna looked at Captain Taman. Sir, should I explain? Taman nodded. Go ahead. Yuna turned back to the screen. Commander, human ships don't use shields. We use armor, layers of it. Our hulls are built like the tanks we used to use on Earth. Composite materials, ceramic plates, reactive sections. We're not built for efficiency. We're built to take hits and keep fighting. Thesic stared at her. That's barbaric. You expect to get hit? We plan for it, Yuna said simply. On Earth, the best defense was never to avoid the hit. It was to survive it and hit back harder. The Council commander looked at the human ships on his sensors. They were smaller than his vessels, but much denser. Heavily armored. Built for war. There's something else, he said quietly. The Kragnath are vicious. They board ships and kill everyone. They don't take prisoners. They are some of the most violent species in the galaxy. Lieutenant Ji-ho stepped onto the screen beside Taimeen. Commander, my team has trained for boarding actions since they were teenagers. We run drills where actual injury is expected. We've studied every form of combat that humanity ever invented. If the Kragnath want to board us, they're welcome to try. Thesic looked at the lieutenant's calm face and felt a chill. These humans talked about violence the way his people talked about farming. It was just something they did. Good luck, Captain, Thesic said finally. I hope you survive. We will, Taman said. And so will the Valorans. The human fleet continued toward Thessera Prime. In the medical bay, Dr. Sujin briefed her staff. The enemy uses plasma weapons. That means burns. Serious ones. We'll need to set up the burn units near the airlocks. Also prepare for decompression injuries, radiation exposure, and kinetic trauma. A young medic raised her hand. Doctor, you're describing casualties from multiple different scenarios. I'm describing everything that could happen, Sujin said. On Earth, we learned to prepare for the worst. Because the worst usually happened. She thought back to her time in the Jakarta habitat collapse. Thousands of people trapped in a failing underwater city. She had worked for 72 hours straight, treating injuries that should have been fatal. But she had saved them anyway. Because that's what humans did. Down in the Marine quarters, Lieutenant Ji-ho watched his soldiers train. They moved through combat drills with smooth efficiency. They practiced fighting in zero gravity, in confined spaces, in damaged corridors filled with smoke and fire. One of his sergeants approached. Sir, the men are ready. I know they are, Ji-ho said. But make sure they understand. The Kragnath are bigger than us, stronger. They have natural armor and claws. And we have brains, tactics, and weapons, the sergeant replied. Plus, we're meaner. Ji-ho smiled. It was true. Humans had fought their way to the top of Earth's food chain, not by being the biggest or strongest. They had done it by being the smartest and the most stubborn. They won by refusing to quit. In her quarters, pilot Sora ran through flight simulations. She was practicing combat maneuvers in asteroid fields and debris clouds. Her reflexes were incredible, honed by years of training in Earth's brutal aerospace academies. The Galactic Council had observers aboard each human ship. They were supposed to report on human capabilities and behavior. But what they saw confused and frightened them. On the Indomitable, a council observer named Prilix watched the crew work. He saw them eating rations that contained capsaicin, a chemical compound that was literally a poison to most species. The humans ate it for flavor. He saw them working in radiation zones that required protective gear for his species. The humans just went in for short periods and rotated out. He saw them discuss battle plans that included acceptable casualty rates. They talked about soldiers dying the way other species talked about equipment breaking. "I don't understand," Prillik said to Navigator Dong-hyun. "How can you be so calm about the possibility of death?" Dong-hyun looked up from his calculations. "Because death is always possible. On Earth, we lived with that knowledge every day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, accidents. Anything could kill you at any time. So we learned not to fear it. We learned to accept it and keep going anyway." "That's horrible," Prilix whispered. "Maybe," Dong-hyun said. "But it made us strong." Earth wasn't a kind mother. It was a harsh teacher. And the lesson was simple: adapt or die. We adapted. He turned back to his work, plotting the final jump to Thesra Prime. "We'll arrive in 6 hours," he announced to the bridge. Captain Taman stood from his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations in 5 hours. Get some rest, eat something, check your gear. When we arrive, the Kragnath will be waiting. They think they're the predators. Let's teach them about evolution." Throughout the ship, the crew prepared. They sharpened their skills, checked their weapons, and made peace with whatever might happen next. They were humans. They had survived worse than pirates. On Thesra Prime, Hanul received a response to her message. It was short. "Help is coming, hold on." She shared the news with the Velerans. They asked who was coming. When she told them it was humans, they looked confused. "But humans are dangerous," Peleg said. "The council classified them as extreme hazards." "Yes," Hanul said. "They did. But sometimes dangerous is exactly what you need." The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the Kragnath blockade. It was a maneuver that every other species considered suicide. Ships needed time to reorient, to raise shields, to prepare for combat. The humans did none of these things. They came in fighting. "Enemy contacts," Navigator Dong-hyun called out. 43 Kragnath warships in orbit around Thesra Prime. They're turning toward us." "Good," Captain Taman said. "That means they're not shooting at the planet. Weapons free. Engage at will." The Kragnath opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts, bright as small suns, crossed the distance between the fleets. They hit the human ship's dead center, and the human ships kept coming. On the Kragnath flagship, Warlord Kragthek watched in confusion. His sensors showed direct hits. His weapons had melted through council ships like hot knives through butter. But these human vessels just kept flying. Their hulls glowed from the heat, but they didn't break. "What are they made of?" one of his officers asked. "Doesn't matter," Kragthek growled. "Fire again, everything we have." The Kragnath fleet unleashed a storm of fire: plasma cannons, kinetic accelerators, fusion missiles, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ships took the hits. Their armor melted in places. Sections blew out into space, but the ships kept coming, kept firing back. Commander Yuna watched the tactical display with cold precision. She had been counting. "Captain, the enemy fires in waves. 3-second cycle time. Their ships cluster for concentrated fire." "Exploit it," Taimin ordered. Yuna's fingers flew across her controls. "All ships, execute pattern Delta 7. Target the clusters." The 5 human warships broke formation. They moved in ways that confused the Kragnath targeting systems. Instead of retreating from the heavy fire, they charged into it. The Indomitable took another direct hit on its forward armor. The outer layer vaporized. The second layer cracked. But the third layer held. And behind that third layer, the ship's main guns fired. The human railguns were simple weapons. No plasma, no exotic energy. Just solid metal slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed. The Kragnath had never seen anything like them. A Kragnath destroyer took a railgun slug through its center. The kinetic energy didn't just puncture the hull. It turned the entire ship into shrapnel. The explosion took out 2 other Kragnath vessels nearby. "Direct hit," reported the weapons officer. "Enemy destroyer destroyed, 2 others disabled." On the Defiant, pilot Sora launched her fighter squadron. 12 small craft, each one carrying a human pilot with reflexes trained on Earth's brutal flight simulators. They dove into the Kragnath formation like sharks into a school of fish. The Kragnath tried to track them with point defense guns, but the human pilots moved too fast, changed direction too quickly. They flew through debris fields that should have torn their ships apart. They executed turns that should have killed them from the G-forces. Sora lined up a shot on a Kragnath cruiser's engine core. She fired her missiles and immediately rolled away. Behind her, the cruiser's engines exploded. The ship went dead in space. "Target destroyed," she reported. Her voice was calm, steady. "Moving to next objective." The Kragnath were starting to panic. They had never faced an enemy like this. These humans didn't fight like civilized species. They fought like animals. No, worse than animals. They fought like Earth. 2 Kragnath ships attempted a boarding action against the Resolute. They locked on with magnetic grapples and cut through the hull with plasma torches. 50 Kragnath warriors poured into the ship, ready for slaughter. They found Lieutenant Ji-Ho waiting. The Marines had sealed off the breach section and set up defensive positions. When the Kragnath charged in, they ran into a wall of gunfire. The Kragnath were big, nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws. They were bred for war, but the humans were ready. Ji-Ho had positioned his team in overlapping fields of fire. The Kragnath couldn't get close without being hit from multiple angles. When they tried to use their natural armor, they learned that human bullets were designed to penetrate armor. When they tried to rush the positions, they learned that humans had invented tactics for stopping charges centuries ago. The battle in the corridor lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, all 50 Kragnath were dead. The Marines had lost 3 soldiers. Ji-Ho checked his team. "Seal the breach. Medics, get the wounded to the medical bay. Everyone else back to stations. They might try again." One of his sergeants looked at the dead Kragnath. "Sir, they're big." "Yes," Ji-Ho said, "but size doesn't matter when you're tactical. Remember that." Back in space, the battle continued. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo worked in the Indomitable's damaged sections, repairing systems while the ship was still under fire. The temperature was extreme. The radiation levels were dangerous. He didn't stop. "Reroute power from the secondary systems," he ordered his team. "I need the main guns at full capacity." "Chief, we're taking hits every few seconds. We can't predict what will fail next." "Then we fix it when it fails," Hyunwoo said. He thought about Jakarta, about keeping failing systems running while water poured in. This was almost easier. "Keep working." Dr. Soo-jin's medical bay was filling with casualties. Burns, shrapnel wounds, broken bones from the impacts. She moved between patients with quick efficiency, triaging and treating. A young ensign was brought in with severe burns on his arm. "Doctor, how bad is it?" "You'll live," Soo-jin said as she applied synthetic skin. "You'll be back on duty in an hour." "An hour? But this is Earth medicine," she said. "We've had a lot of practice with trauma. Now hold still." On the Kragnath flagship, Warlord Kragthek watched his fleet fall apart. He had started with 43 ships. He was down to 28. The humans still had all 5 of theirs, even though they should have been destroyed 3 times over. "What are they?" he demanded again. His science officer checked the readings. "Warlord, their ships are built wrong. They have too much armor, not enough shields. Their weapons are primitive kinetic systems. Their tactics are aggressive to the point of insanity. But they're winning." "How?" "Because they're willing to take damage. They expect to be hit. Their whole design philosophy is based on surviving damage and continuing to fight." Kragthek finally understood. These weren't the soft species he was used to fighting. These were predators. Real predators. The kind that evolved on worlds where nothing was safe, nothing was easy, and survival meant being tougher than everything else. He made a decision. "All ships, focus fire on their lead vessel. Concentrate everything on that one ship. We'll break them one at a time." 28 Kragnath ships turned their weapons on the Indomitable. The combined firepower lit up space like a supernova. On the bridge, alarms screamed. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 12, reported the damage control officer. Forward armor is failing. Captain Tayman stood steady in his chair. Helm, take us straight at their flagship. Sir, we can't survive that much fire. We don't need to survive, Tayman said. We just need to last long enough to reach them. Una, target their flagship's engines. Already locked on, sir. The Indomitable pushed forward into the storm of fire. Its armor peeled away in sheets, compartments vented atmosphere, but the ship kept coming. Inside the ship, the crew worked at their stations even as the walls buckled around them. When a console exploded, someone else took over. When a section lost power, they rerouted. They were humans. They didn't quit. The Indomitable closed to point-blank range with the Kragnath flagship. At this distance, both ships' weapons could do maximum damage. It was mutual suicide range. Fire, Tayman ordered. The Indomitable's railguns fired straight into the Kragnath flagship's engines. The slugs punched through the armor and detonated the reactor containment. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. The Kragnath flagship tore itself apart from the inside out. The shockwave hit the Indomitable, sending it spinning. Damage report, Tayman called out. We're alive, someone replied. Barely, but we're alive. The remaining Kragnath fleet stared at the wreckage of their flagship. Their warlord was dead. Their strongest ship was destroyed. And the humans were still fighting. One by one, the Kragnath ships began to retreat. They broke formation and fled into the darkness. The humans didn't pursue. They had achieved their objective. On Thessera Prime, Hanul and the Velerans watched the sky. The dark shapes of the Kragnath ships were leaving. In their place, 5 battered but victorious human warships took up orbit. They did it, Pelix whispered. The Deathworlders actually did it. Hanul smiled, tears in her eyes. Of course they did. They're human. We don't know how to quit. The Kragnath fleet regrouped beyond the planet's outer moon. They had lost 15 ships to the humans' 0. Their most powerful vessel was destroyed. Their warlord was dead. The survivors sat in their ships trying to understand what had happened. On the bridge of the cruiser, Dark Talon, Commander Threkakal looked at the tactical display. The 5 human ships hung in orbit around Thessera Prime, their hulls scarred and smoking but still operational. How? One of his officers asked. We hit them with everything. They should be debris. They're built different, Threkakal said quietly. I've studied the sensor logs. Their ships have no shields, just armor. Layers and layers of it. When we hit them, we damage them. But we don't destroy them. Another officer brought up footage from the boarding attempt. They watched the corridor battle again. Watched how the humans fought with coordination and precision. How they used tactics that turned the Kragnath size into a disadvantage. They're trained for this, the tactical officer said. Not just trained, evolved for it. Look at their reaction speeds. Look at how they move under stress. Threkakal nodded slowly. The Galactic Council was right to fear them. These aren't like the soft species we usually raid. These are apex predators. What do we do, Commander? It was a good question. Kragnath culture valued strength and victory. Retreat was shameful. But staying meant fighting an enemy they didn't understand and couldn't seem to kill. Before Threkakal could answer, a transmission came through on all Kragnath frequencies. It was from the humans. Intelligence Officer Hejin's face appeared on their screens. She looked calm, professional. Behind her, images began to play. Attention, Kragnath Fleet, she said. My name is Hejin of Earth. I want to tell you about my planet. Images flashed on the screen. Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Then the images changed. 66 million years ago, an asteroid hit Earth, Hejin continued. It killed 75% of all life. The impact was so powerful it caused global fires and blocked out the sun for years. Life on Earth survived. More images. Ice sheets covering continents. 2 million years ago, Earth entered an ice age. Temperatures dropped so low that most of the planet was uninhabitable. The creatures that would become humans survived. More images. Volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, droughts. 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted. It almost ended humanity. Our population dropped to just a few thousand individuals. We survived. Yijin leaned forward. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. It failed. When we ran out of natural disasters to survive, we created our own. We call them wars. Images of human warfare filled the screens. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Medieval sieges. World wars with millions of deaths. Nuclear explosions. We fought each other for 10,000 years, Yijin said. We invented thousands of ways to kill. We destroyed entire cities. We created weapons that could end our species. And through it all, we survived. We learned. We adapted. She paused, letting the images sink in. The Kragnoth watched in growing horror. You think you're warriors, Hyejin continued. You think you're dangerous. But you evolved on a gentle world. You fight for territory and resources. We evolved on a world that tried to murder us every single day. We fight because it's in our DNA. It's how we survived. More images. Human medical advances. Humans rebuilding after disasters. Humans exploring space. We don't tell you this to brag, Hyejin said softly. We tell you this so you understand. When you attacked the Valorans, you thought you were predators hunting prey. But you made a mistake. You called Earth. And Earth sent its answer. The transmission ended with one final image. The 5 human warships in orbit, battered but unbroken. Threkakal sat in silence. Around him, his crew looked shaken. They had faced dangerous enemies before. But the humans were something else entirely. They were evolution's favorite survivor. Commander, an officer whispered, what do we do? Before he could answer, alerts blared across the ship. Sir, long-range sensors detect a new contact. It's the Kragnoth Dreadnought Endless Night. Threkkal felt relief and dread at the same time. The Endless Night was the Dominion's largest warship, commanded by Warlord Kragthek's brother, Vorgthek. It was twice the size of a normal battleship and carried a planet-killer weapon. He's here to avenge his brother, someone said. And to finish what we started, Threkkal added. The massive dreadnought dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was dark and menacing, its hull covered in weapon ports. On its bridge, Warlord Vorgthek looked at the tactical display showing his brother's destroyed fleet. So, he growled, the humans think they're dangerous. Let's see how they handle this. He activated the ship's main weapon, the Planet Killer. It was a massive fusion lance that could burn through a planet's crust and ignite the mantle. One shot could turn Thessera Prime into a burning wasteland. Charge the weapon, Vorgthek ordered. We'll destroy the planet and the human fleet together. On the Indomitable, sensors detected the new threat. Captain Taman looked at the readings and felt his stomach drop. The Dreadnought's weapon was charging. In 10 minutes, it would fire. That weapon will kill everyone on the planet, Yuna said. Millions of Valorans. And us if we stay in orbit, added Dong Hyun. Taimin looked at his crew. They were tired, wounded, running on emergency power. His ship had taken terrible damage. Every system was barely holding together. But there were millions of civilians below them. Civilians they had come to save. Helm, Taman said quietly. Set an intercept course for that dreadnought. Sir? You heard me. We're going to ram it. The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. At their current speed and the dreadnought size, a collision would likely destroy both ships. It was suicide. Captain, Yuna said. There might be another way. There isn't, Taiman replied. If we don't stop that ship, millions die. This is the only option. Dr. Sujin's voice came over the intercom from medical. Captain, if we're going to do this, we should do it now. Most of the crew can make it to the escape pods. No, Taiman said. If we evacuate, the ship won't be properly controlled. The impact needs to be precise to disable their weapon. We all stay. He opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. We're going to stop that dreadnought. We're going to save those people down there. And we're probably not coming back from this. But that's okay. Because this is what we came here to do. This is what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. It's been an honor serving with you all. Throughout the ship, the crew responded, not with fear or complaints, with determination. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo redirected all remaining power to the engines and forward armor. Captain, I've stripped everything. Weapons, life support, sensors. You'll have one hell of a charge, but only one. That's all we need, Taemin said. Lieutenant Jiho secured his Marines in crash positions. Sir, my teams are ready for impact. Pilot Sora brought her fighter back to the ship. Captain, I'm landing. If you're going down, I'm going with you. The other 4 human ships moved to support positions, but they all knew they couldn't stop the dreadnought. Only the Indomitable's sacrifice could make the difference. On Thessera Prime, Hanul watched through her telescope. She saw the massive Kragnath dreadnought appear, saw it start charging its terrible weapon. Then she saw the Indomitable break orbit and accelerate toward it. What are they doing? Pelix asked. Hanul understood immediately. Tears filled her eyes. They're saving us. The Indomitable accelerated to maximum speed. Its engines burned so hot, they glowed white. The ship cut through space like a bullet, aimed directly at the dreadnought's forward section where the planet-killer weapon was mounted. Warlord Vorgthek saw them coming. They're insane. They're actually going to ram us. Should we fire on them? No, Vorgthek said slowly. Let them come. I want to see the look on their captain's face when they realize it won't work. Our armor is too thick. They'll just bounce off. But he didn't understand. He didn't know about human engineering, about ships built to survive and to hurt, about crews trained to sacrifice. The Indomitable closed the distance. On the bridge, Captain Taemin gripped his chair. Commander Yuna held onto her console. Navigator Dong Hyun kept the course steady. Every crew member braced for impact. For Earth, Taemin whispered. For humanity. For those who need us. The ship struck the dreadnought like a hammer hitting an anvil. The collision shook both ships like they were toys. The Indomitable's reinforced nose, designed with multiple layers of dense armor, punched through the dreadnought's outer hull. Metal screamed. Systems exploded. Fire bloomed in the vacuum of space. But the Indomitable didn't bounce off. It didn't break apart. It penetrated deep into the dreadnought's forward section, right where the planet-killer weapon was mounted. On the Kragnath ship, Warlord Vorgthek was thrown from his chair. Alarms screamed throughout the vessel. Report! Sir, the human ship has breached our hull. They're inside us. The weapon charging system is damaged. We can't fire. Vorgthek couldn't believe it. The insane humans had actually done it. They had turned their ship into a weapon and struck with surgical precision. On the Indomitable's bridge, emergency lights flickered. Captain Taemin pulled himself up from where he had been thrown. His arm was broken, but he ignored the pain. Status, he called out. We're stuck in their hull, Navigator Donghyun replied. He was bleeding from a cut on his head, but still at his station. But we're alive. Most systems are offline, but life support is holding. Commander Yuna checked her tactical display, which was barely working. Sir, their weapon is disabled. They can't fire. Good, Taemin said. Now we finish this. Jiho, are you mobile? The lieutenant's voice came through the damaged intercom. Yes, sir. My team is ready. Then let's go pay our hosts a visit. Lieutenant Jiho and his Marines had trained for boarding actions their entire careers. They had practiced fighting in damaged ships, in zero gravity, in smoke and fire. This was what they were made for. They cut through the damaged sections between the two ships and entered the dreadnought. The Kragnath crew tried to stop them. But the Marines moved like water, flowing around obstacles, covering each other, advancing with ruthless efficiency. The Kragnath were bigger and stronger, but the humans were faster and smarter. They used the dreadnought's own corridors against its defenders. They turned corners into kill zones. They made every meter cost the Kragnath dearly. Jiho led his team toward the reactor core. If they could disable it, the entire ship would be dead in space. His tactical implant showed the route, accounting for blocked passages and enemy positions. They fought through 3 decks. The Marines lost soldiers, but they kept moving, Because that's what humans did. They endured. They persisted. They won. Meanwhile, Captain Taman made his way through the damaged Indomitable toward the breach point. His arm hung useless at his side, but he carried a sidearm in his good hand. Commander Yuna was with him, her uniform torn and blood-stained, but her eyes sharp and focused. They found Warlord Vorgthek trying to rally his guards for a counterattack. The Kragnath warlord was massive, nearly 3 meters of muscle and natural armor. He saw the two humans and laughed. "You think two of you can stop me?" he roared. Taman raised his weapon. "I don't need to stop you. I just need to slow you down." The warlord charged. He was fast for his size, covering the distance in seconds. But Yuna had been analyzing his movement from the moment she saw him. She calculated his trajectory, his speed, his reach. "Left, 2 meters," she said calmly. Taman dodged left. The warlord's claws missed by centimeters. Taman fired 3 shots into the exposed joint of the warlord's armor. The Kragnath roared in pain but kept coming. It wasn't a fair fight. The warlord was bigger, stronger, better armored. But humans hadn't survived Earth by fighting fair. They survived by fighting smart. Yuna threw a piece of debris at the warlord's face, distracting him for just a second. Taman used that second to roll under a low-hanging pipe. The warlord followed, but his size worked against him in the cramped space. "Yuna, support beam, 10 meters behind him," Taman called out. She understood immediately. She fired at the damaged support beam. It creaked, but held. "Not enough structural damage," she reported. The warlord swung at Taman again. His claws raked across the captain's shoulder, drawing blood. But Taman was already moving, leading the warlord back toward that weakened beam. "Now!" Taman shouted. Yuna fired 3 more shots. The support beam gave way. The ceiling section above them collapsed, hundreds of kilograms of metal crashing down. The warlord looked up too late. The debris buried him. Taman and Yuna stood panting, injured but alive. "Is he dead?" Yuna asked. "Probably not," Taman said. "But he's out of the fight. Let's find Jiho." Deep in the Dreadnought's engineering section, Lieutenant Jiho and his remaining Marines reached the reactor core. The Kragnath had made a last stand here, but the Marines had fought through. Jiho looked at the massive reactor. He didn't need to destroy it. He just needed to shut it down safely so it wouldn't explode and kill everyone, including the Valorans on the planet below. "Sergeant, can you do it?" His engineering sergeant studied the controls. They were alien, but energy systems followed universal laws. "Yes, sir." "Give me 5 minutes." They didn't have 5 minutes. More Kragnath guards were coming. Jiho could hear them in the corridors outside. "Hold this position," he ordered. "Nobody gets through." The Marines formed a defensive line. They were down to 8 soldiers from the original 20. They were wounded, exhausted, running low on ammunition, but they held. The Kragnath attacked in waves. The Marines fought them back. Every shot counted. Every second mattered. 4 minutes, the sergeant called out. More Kragnath came. The Marines gave ground slowly, falling back toward the reactor chamber, making the enemy pay for every meter. 3 minutes. A Marine fell, then another. But the line held. 2 minutes. Jiho's rifle clicked empty. He drew his sidearm and kept firing. Beside him, his soldiers did the same. 1 minute. The Kragnath charged all at once, trying to overwhelm them by sheer numbers. The Marines met them with everything they had left. "Done!" the sergeant shouted. "Reactor is shutting down." The lights throughout the Dreadnought began to dim. The Kragnath stopped fighting, realizing what had happened. Their ship was dead. Jiho lowered his weapon. "Ceasefire, it's over." On the remaining Kragnath ships, Commander Threkakal watched the Dreadnought go dark. He saw the human flags being raised on its hull. He made a decision. "All ships," he transmitted, "withdraw. The humans have won." One by one, the Kragnath vessels turned and fled into deep space. The battle was over. The other 4 human warships moved to secure the Dreadnought. Medical teams rushed aboard both damaged vessels. Dr. Sujin set up field hospitals. treating both human and Kragnath wounded. On Thessera Prime, Hanul and the Velerans watched the human ships in orbit. Slowly, cautiously, they emerged from their shelters. The siege was over. They were safe. Human shuttles began landing on the planet's surface. The Valorans approached nervously. These were the Deathworlders they had heard about. The dangerous species from the killer planet. The shuttle doors opened. Lieutenant Jiho limped out, wounded and exhausted. Behind him came his Marines, carrying their injured. They looked small compared to what the Valorans had expected. They looked tired. They looked human. Hanul ran forward and embraced Jiho. He looked surprised but hugged her back gently. "You came?" she said, crying. "You actually came?" "Of course we did," Jiho replied. "You asked for help." Pelix approached carefully. He had expected monsters, but these humans looked so ordinary. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you risk everything for us?" Jiho looked at him with tired eyes. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because you needed help and we could give it. That's reason enough." Weeks later, the Galactic Council convened to discuss what had happened. They watched recordings of the battle. They reviewed reports from their observers. They debated for hours. Finally, they invited Captain Taman to speak. His arm was still in a medical brace, but he stood straight before the council chamber. Ambassador Vexitari addressed him. "Captain Taman, the council has reviewed your actions at Thessera Prime. We classified Earth as a death world. We called humanity dangerous. Some of us wanted to maintain your quarantine forever." Taemin nodded. "I understand." "But we were wrong," Vextari continued. "Not about Earth being a death world, not about humans being dangerous. We were wrong about what that means. Yes, you're dangerous, but you're also protectors. You fight not to conquer but to defend. Your planet made you hard, but not cruel." He paused. "The Council votes to end Earth's quarantine. We invite humanity to join the Galactic Council as full members. You have earned your place among the stars." Taemin bowed slightly. "We accept. But understand this. We didn't fight for a seat at your table. We fought because people needed help. That won't change. Whether you give us membership or not, we'll keep doing what we do. We'll keep protecting those who can't protect themselves." "That's exactly why we want you here," Vextari said. Months passed. Human ships began patrolling the outer sectors, the dangerous zones where pirates operated. Where human ships went, piracy stopped. Not because humans conquered, but because predators recognized a greater predator. On the bridge of the newly repaired Indomitable, Captain Taemin sat in his chair. His crew was around him. Commander Yuna at tactics, Navigator Dong Hyun at his station, Lieutenant Ji Ho overseeing security. Dr. Sujin was in medical. Chief Engineer Hyun Woo was in engineering. Pilot Sora was ready in her fighter. A distress call came through. A mining colony under attack. Pirates. Hostages. Taemin looked at his crew. They looked back at him with determination in their eyes. They knew what came next. "All hands," Taemin announced. "Battle stations. Someone needs help." The Indomitable turned toward the distress signal, its engines burning bright. Behind it, the rest of the human fleet followed. The galaxy had learned about Deathworlders. They were dangerous, yes. But they were also humanity. And humanity protected its own. And now, the galaxy was humanity's own. Among the stars, a message spread from world to world, carried by grateful survivors and frightened pirates alike. If you need help, call Earth. If you're in trouble, the humans will come. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They survive, they endure, and they protect.